Oh, hey, mid-drink. Welcome back, everybody. It is Basketball by Association. My name is Arky. That is Joel. Joel, hello.
He acts like it's an accident when he's the one hitting the recording button. So I'm going to take that drink and raise you one here. That tastes good. All right, we're episode 6. Not 6, but
What?
in honor of someone who wore number 6 is really what this is. Because technically, Arky Shea, this is episode 58, and no player in NBA history has ever worn the number 58. So we had to do a little bit of a backup thing, call in some favors, and instead we're talking about somebody who won the MVP in the year 1958. And yes, he wore number 6. This is the Bill Russell episode. And if you're joining us on YouTube, thank you so much for doing that. You can pick us up on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your podcast if you want the audio version. And if you're listening on the audio version and you want the video, hey, here we are on the YouTubes. Let's do it.
And also thank you to Bill Russell for watching.
Yeah. Which we presume. I mean.
Yeah, no, we know him.
Assume and presume. Yeah. We're like this.
We're simpatico. That's what we are. A lot to talk about on this here podcast. I think the biggest news we should start with is that this week was the return of Anthony Davis to the lineup for the Los Angeles Lakers of Los Angeles. And not good in his first 2 games back. Not good. I think he was 7 of 29. He's got a couple of comments I want to talk about that he's mentioned in those 2 games, including a couple of losses to the Mavericks. One, by the way, where they were close until the fourth quarter showed up, and then the bottom fell out.
Saturday night. Well, I guess Saturday afternoon.
But speaking of just Anthony Davis coming back, the importance of getting one of their 2 big dudes back is what do you think to this team?
Monumental. He doesn't look good right now. He's rusty. The team is disjointed because there's been a lot of moving parts. Andre Drummond arrived while Anthony Davis was out. Ben McLemore was signed while Anthony Davis was out. Those 2 guys are in the starting lineup now. So you talk about Anthony Davis shaking off his own rust, but then trying to get chemistry with those guys, and different players have had to step up into different roles. You know, Marc Gasol was the starting center last time Anthony Davis was playing. Gasol is now coming off the bench after having been benched for a long period of time. Montrezl Harrell, who had taken the lion's share of the minutes really with Davis gone, didn't even play on Saturday, which was really odd, although maybe it was just a rest day for him. So no LeBron James, no Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but it is better to be going through these pains right now than to be going through them during the playoffs. Nonetheless, the Lakers are sinking fast and in danger of that play-in tournament, which I think is where you're wanting to go here.
Well, I wanted to get to a few things about that. One, Anthony Davis did say, quote, "It's like you're getting started over again with these guys and just trying to find a connection with these guys again." Let's not forget, he's been gone 9 weeks, Joel.
Yeah.
9 weeks is a long time, especially during the peak of the season, to be gone from a team who is the defending champion, just trying to find some semblance. And you haven't had the LeBron James to just sort of hold the team up while you come back. You had him for a little bit. Now LeBron's been hurt for a while. But anyway, he said, quote, "They're trying to find a connection with me. So it's like we're starting from zero, which is so tough late in the season." Joel, they only have a dozen games back. And he says they got a couple of games still on this East Coast road trip that they got to get, including Orlando,
yeah,
and Washington. And he's called both of those games must wins for this Lakers team. Now, if you haven't been paying attention to the standings, the Lakers are in jeopardy right now. The Lakers are 4 games out of hosting a playoff series at all, and that looks like it is not going to happen at this juncture right now, with Denver being the one that's up on them 4 games. It's tough with a dozen games to go, but you're right. They're heading more towards the play-in tournament than they are towards hosting playoff tournament basketball. So, Joel, what's happening over these next 12 games? How worried should Lakers fans be?
You do not want to get into a single play-in game and not have LeBron James back already for a few games, and that may not happen. It's almost, to me, that, and this is so weird to say about a multi-time MVP, but if you get Anthony Davis and the group gelling right, and LeBron suddenly is ready to come back at playoff time, but you have to do a play-in game, and this may go down as one of the worst decisions in history, I would almost not play LeBron in that game. Or if it is, it's in limited minutes where he's not trying to jump back into his normal role. And again, this is all theoretical because he may not even be back. In the meantime, it's about getting on the same page. The one thing that stands out to me when I watch the Lakers is just how big they are. Especially with Davis back. Like, Davis was playing center for a lot of minutes on the Lakers. Yeah, they had Marc Gasol as a spot starter because he could presumably stretch the floor a little bit, although that didn't happen as much as they wanted. But now you have Drummond and Davis up front together. They're going to go with a big forward at the small forward spot. So it's Morris or it's Kuzma. Those are big guys and rather lanky, and those are the ones that are kind of filling those small forward spot. And then at the point guard position, you've got Dennis Schroeder, who may not be all that tall, but he's one of the longest arm guards in the league. And that's one of the big reasons that got him into the NBA in the first place with Atlanta. Alex Caruso is bigger than you think. And of course, if LeBron comes back, then you're talking about basically the biggest point guard in the league. And you've got normal size shooting guards, but they're not undersized at any of those spots. So the length is there. But what I saw against Dallas is a team that was big and slow.
Yeah,
individually slow for some, like Anthony Davis, individually slow, kind of makes sense. Other guys kind of not playing with the same fire that they should. There were some speedy ones that stood out. You know, Dennis Schroeder is always quick. Talen Horton-Tucker is quicker than most of the other guys on the roster. But it wasn't just the individual slowness. It was the slowness to react as a group defensively.
Yeah.
They were trying to trap, and they were slow at that. And Dallas eventually started just running basic high pick and rolls with Luka and Dwight Powell. And anytime, whether they ran it from the top or from the wings or the baseline, just two guys coming downhill was enough to bust up the Lakers defense. And Dallas probably should have done a lot of that sooner, where instead they were trying to swing the ball around the wing or play drive and kick because Luka was getting trapped. So they figured it out. Other teams are going to do that against LA. That slowness, I don't think is a physical slowness, Arky. I think it's the mental slowness of not being on the same page with rotations and such.
Yeah, watching them since Anthony Davis has come back, and again, it's only been 2 games, so you know we'll see.
This can change in a week, right? This can all change in a week.
But that is not a playoff team. That does not look like a team that's the defending world champions right now. They are very, very, very different than what they were last year and what they're going to need to do any damage. I mean, this team right now compromised as they are. And I do that mean as like how they are compromised and how they are physically compromised. This team could very easily lose a 1 game out sort of playoff scenario. This is not a team that is destined just to get to the main tournament just because of who they are. Like, they're talented, but they're not playing like it. And again, we'll give Anthony Davis and the guys some more time to sort of figure out what they're going to look like. But I worry. Do you agree with Anthony Davis that these next 2 games on this road trip, I didn't mean necessarily East Coast road trip, but on this road trip, that these are must wins?
No, I don't agree necessarily. I think for their confidence, it would certainly help. I think if they drop a game to
but if they drop both, that's a 5-game losing streak right now. And
it is. But things are so tight between the 5 and the 10 spots that, again, it really more is about staying healthy and getting on the same page and speeding up those reads, speeding up reaction time, and then just speeding up Anthony Davis and him understanding how he's going to play with Drummond, a guy who has to be around the basket at all times. He'll set some high screen and rolls, but then he's got to dive. It's not so far different than Montrezl Harrell, but Harrell is quicker at what he does on the offensive end, and he likes to fly in for offensive rebounds, whereas Drummond is a guy who carves out space inside and waits to gobble up offensive rebounds. That gets in the way of some of the things that Anthony Davis does. Davis, of course, is stretchy, but not when he's 0 for 6 from downtown like he was against Dallas. So those things have to come. There's no shame right now, and it's so weird to say this, there's no shame right now if you drop a game to the Washington Wizards on the road, because Washington is 9-1 in their last 10. They're hot, they're playing well, and they've got the kind of attacking guards that LA might struggle with. You lose to Orlando, that is a confidence breaker at this moment. So it's get right and then get back on track. I don't know that it's must win. There's a little hyperbole there, but I do understand Davis trying to light a fire under the guys to go, look, if we're not going to be quick mentally, we got to be quicker physically. Like, we have to ratchet up the intensity and the urgency now. And I will say this, it kind of goes back to, remember at the very beginning of the season, the Lakers came in, they were the team that had played the latest into the year outside of Miami, and they had to coast a little bit, right? And they dropped some games early on where we all went, not a really big deal because it's so early in the season and they've got to rest. And it was fine then, but it just goes to show you why an NBA season matters, because don't you think that 3-4 more wins early on in the season would have been one appreciated cushion that the Lakers could be using right now, and now they don't have it?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Listen, that's why we mentioned as healthy as you guys could have been, whether it was the COVID protocols or injuries, the way you could have sort of stacked up wins and sort of banked them, so to speak, could be the difference between hosting playoff game right now or playing in the play-in tournament. And like you said, things are tight. But if they lost to a 23 games under 500 Magic team, and again, it's no shame if you lost to the Wizards, because like you said, they've won 9 of 10, and they are very, very, very capable of being in that Eastern play-in game. And not only that, but maybe even competing in a series if they got into the whole thing. That, Joel, it's mentally, I think it could get very tough for that team. It's a deep team. There's a lot of veterans on that team too. It's not a bunch of young babies out there playing it. But you're running out of games, man. And I think that's the thing that's the scariest for me, and we're going to go, I think, sort of move on to the next team speaking about this. You're running out of games because Kevin Durant just came back again for the Nets on a minutes restriction. Yep. And
here we go again.
The last time we spoke, James Harden was back to square one with his rehabilitation. And James Harden is coming back again for some minutes restrictions play. And Brooklyn not in the same position nearly as far as where they are in the standings that the Lakers are. But that same sort of attitude kind of applies, that like if you only get so many games together, how good are you going to possibly be? And how long does it take you to get to championship type level play? It's going to be hard to figure out. That's why I think it was such a smart move by Brooklyn, considering now, to sort of try to add as many decent warm bodies as they could to try to get through stretches like this. But what do you think about Kevin Durant and his comeback so far? Which was,
which is kind of sort of in progress as we're taping this. We've said it over and over through the season. 1, 2, 3 games back for Kevin Durant, fine and all, well and good, but he's got to log 10 in a row or more and stay healthy and not get dinged up. And that has not happened in a long time. And really what it comes down to, Arky, is you need predictability in the form of reliability when you get into the playoffs. You need to know who is filling what roles, not only as a coach, but as a player out there. You need to know that when I go here, I know my guy will be there. When I do this, my guy will do that. When I'm on defense, I know who's got my back and who's rotating, and I know they'll be on time. And I know that if they screw up once or I screw up once, we're going to let each other know about it, but it's not going to happen again. And we're going to be able to adjust what other teams are doing. And so when you have brand new players, this is the chemistry that gets talked about so much as if it's a cliche, but the chemistry comes from not having to stop and think about what really is happening, but to read and react together where you are on that proverbial same page because you're all thinking alike, and you lower that learning curve by that predictability that's earned through practices and those games where you made the early mistakes. You yelled at each other a little bit. You went into practice. You went into the film room, whatever it is, you cleaned it up and you got it to work in the next game and the next and so on. When you have brand new players, it takes that much longer to build that sort of thing as a group. You might get chemistry with one guy over here and another over here, but the more moving parts you add into this, the harder it's going to be. So you have an advantage if you're Kevin Durant to some extent coming back, in that most of these Nets were here in similar roles the last times you've played. You might get on that same page a little bit quicker, but it is a lot harder when it's a revolving door of Kyrie Irving and James Harden around you, the two guys that matter most for you to be on the same page with. And in that regards, for Anthony Davis, it's a little bit harder. Like you said, 9 weeks out and some pretty key pieces that have been added in that he's never played with yet. So you got to lay some tracks. It takes time to build that.
Yeah, he missed another 3 games. He said for his game Sunday, as we're recording this, he's playing right now against the Suns. They're down by 9, but more importantly, that he was going to play fewer than 30 minutes. And if I look at the box score, right, he's come off the bench. He's got 5 points in 4 minutes, and that's in the first 20 minutes of the game. So he's well on pace to play under the under 30 minutes for the game against Phoenix, who is another team I want to talk about in a little bit, who's not been nearly as hot as that they were at one point. They've sort of cooled off as we're getting toward the playoffs. But back to Kevin Durant and sort of at Brooklyn and their sort of strength going forward and what that may be, is that Steve Nash and I don't want to say I feel bad for a guy who's in a really enviable position to be in, but like I wonder how many times he's had to say the following thing, quote, "We're obviously aware of how little basketball he's played the big picture. We're just trying to see what kind of legs he gets under him, and hopefully he can get some good shape before the playoffs start." Like some version of that he's probably said 45 times in the past like month. Like it's just, we know the boom possibility for Brooklyn, but they're so it's so cautiously optimistic with Brooklyn, like what to even expect health-wise from these guys. Like their starting lineup today was Green, Harris, Jordan, Shamet, and Irving.
Mm-hmm.
Kyrie's got 21 of their first 49 points, by the way. But it's just a very different lineup if you have Harden and Kevin Durant in there, and maybe they're not down by 10 to Phoenix right now. And by the way,
not only has it been a revolving door health roster as you've described, but just think of the weirdness of the season and the baptism by fire. You're in the COVID year and all the things we've talked about in the wrinkles, in addition to all the injuries. And Brooklyn did get hit by COVID stuff pretty hard early. But your starting center, who you acquired around the trade deadline, had to retire 6 games into the year because of a freak heart issue. We're talking about Lamarcus Aldridge. You almost like, again, if they win the championship, I said this on our show Wednesday or Thursday, if they win the championship, they will have earned this one, not bought it, because of the amount of variables that you have had to navigate. But it is by no means a given. And I don't even think that this is an on paper champion, even if they're all healthy at this moment, because of how late in the game we are. These are the type of teams, and we've seen this time and time again. The uber talented team that is not on the same page will run into somebody who not only out executes them and out, hustles them and all that stuff in the playoffs, but just has the sort of like breaks go their way. And that doesn't come from luck. That comes from the chemistry that I spoke about just moments ago.
So here is what Brooklyn's looking at the rest of the way. Besides Phoenix, now then they'll take a couple of games on the road at Toronto and at Indianapolis, then at home against Portland, then back-to-back road games at Milwaukee, at Dallas, at Denver, at Chicago, and then finish the season at home against San Antonio, Chicago, and Cleveland.
Those are all teams except for Cleveland fighting for a playoff spot or seeding, right?
That's true. But it does seem like a schedule with how they are still number one in the East right now by a game. You can go 500-ish and still obviously be hosting. You might be able to go a little bit above that and still win the East at this point. But like it really is about how soon can you get everybody together, and James Harden may just be off limits until the playoffs at this point, and that's May 16th, the last day of the regular season, and like that's less than a month, Joel.
Right.
Like from a guy who's going back to square one from his for his rehabilitation. And listen, that Brooklyn team is good with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, But if you had all three, I mean, they're the favorite to win the title. Without, they're just really good battling teams to try to win the title. I think.
They're the favorite to win the title 2 months ago. I don't think even if you get all three back, that they're the favorite to win the title. Beyond us going, yeah, talent-wise, okay, but like I said, it's so late in the game, there's going to be a big learning curve that I would not, if I was a betting man, they would not be my favorite, even at full health, if you're not getting Harden back until right before the playoffs. If he was walking through that door today, and we knew that we were going to get Kyrie, KD, and Harden for the next dozen games, the next 3.5 weeks, like you said, if we knew that, okay, I might be willing to put some money down on them, but not if it's like 2 games before the playoffs begin. Like they'll be okay, but they're not the favorites.
Well, let me ask you then, based on what we're seeing so far, with again, we're less than a month, 3+ weeks ish away from the end of the regular season. Based on how you're seeing these teams and their injuries with the Lakers, Brooklyn, the Red Hot Knicks. By the way, just waiting on the 10th game to show up on the schedule so they can win the 10th game in a row. Mm-hmm. That's how awesome my Knicks are right now. Who would you think would be your favorite coming out of each side?
As long as Simmons and Embiid actually are healthy, and that's been a little bit touch and go here again over the last week or two. I'll take Philly and I'll take the Clippers. The more that I watch Utah, the more that I see a really, really good regular season team who I don't think is top line talented enough to win a championship. And again, Donovan Mitchell isn't there. That changes a little bit if he's back, which I think he will be. Phoenix, I think, can win a playoff series. I think they're going to be one of those classic teams that might get rolled in a second round series when the going really gets tough.
Are you kidding me? They're going to get rolled tomorrow night in New York.
Denver, I'm not even going to dignify that. They might, but Denver, now all of a sudden goes from, hey, we're okay, Jamal Murray is out, to, oh, we don't have Monte Morris either in the backcourt, to now, oh, Will Barton is out for an indeterminate amount of time. And things are getting tough for them, which again is good news for the Lakers and a dark horse team that could rise out of the Western Conference if things get rolling for them. But to me, it's probably Utah and the Clippers in the conference finals. In the East, again, Brooklyn, if fully healthy, I think can get to the Eastern Conference finals and face off against Philadelphia. There's the Giannis factor with Milwaukee. I know I'm throwing in a ton of caveats here, but this is the way it goes. There is the Giannis factor that they may catch a team who just cannot stop him and cannot game plan for him, and they're talented enough at the other positions to take advantage of that, especially with improved shooting now. But for me in the Eastern Conference, it's probably Brooklyn and Philly in the conference finals, and it's Philly getting out unless, again, the injury bug keeps biting the Sixers.
Yes, so I did finally, I'm glad you mentioned them. The Clippers. Mm-hmm. I feel like they're the one team throughout this entire podcast this season that I don't think we've given much discussion to. Mm-mm. Because I think we've sort of seen the sexy names and the sexy teams and the dramatic rises and falls of some of these teams that we've sort of walked away from this quiet, not same Los Angeles Clippers team as last year, mm-hmm. into what is really a team that I think is maybe poised to take advantage of all of this. They're 2 games back in the West. They've won 9 out of the last 10. In fact, let me give you their April schedule so far. All right, just the results. Okay, start out with the loss against Denver, but then win, loss, win. You hear me? Lots of wins so far in April, which is an important month to be getting all these wins in right now. Normally we're getting ready for the playoffs, but right now this team is playing hot. We are getting regular season Paul George, which is better than playoff Paul George, who is playing fantastic. They've been a lot of this without Kawhi Leonard, by the way, mm-hmm. who has been sort of dealing with his foot issue for some time with them. So do you think this could be the year because of how things are falling in front of them? It sounded like you were alluding to it this way, that like the Clippers could sort of take advantage of all of the chaos in front of them and the fact that they're still pretty good, they could end up being your world champion.
There is the possibility. They were so over the radar last year, right?
Oh
I mean,
God,
they were on the radar and everywhere, and they were the sexy team that Brooklyn became this year, where it's all anybody wanted to talk about. And chemistry never got right with that team. They looked great at times, but their stars didn't play enough together. And when they finally did, it was too late in the season, and they ran up against teams and didn't, weren't able to overcome that. Now, even though, as you alluded to, Kawhi Leonard has missed some games again this year, Paul George has missed some games again this year. There's a lot of guys who have missed games this year. Patrick Beverley has not been right all season. But at the same time, most of the core, the key guys who matter, are still there. So we talked about the learning curve of knowing who's doing what. And you talk about like going through some battles and making some mistakes and hopefully learning from that. Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Patrick Beverley, Ivica Zubac, they've done that now. Reggie Jackson, they've done that. Marcus Morris, they've done that. You bring in some new guys who are playing some key minutes like Nick Batum, like Luke Kennard, Rajon Rondo is there now. But again, you look up and down the roster, Serge Ibaka's there. You've got a lot of guys who have won championships before, or at least been to the finals. You've got DeMarcus Cousins as your third string center. You've got talent at every position, which they had last year, but you've learned a lot, I think, of how you want to play. You think now that at least if Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are both healthy in a playoff series, they've got that reliability, that predictability factor between them and vice versa with a lot of teammates. And they're long and switchy. I mean, if you think about it, like, I don't know if Patrick Beverley will play again this year, but Reggie Jackson is a long arm point guard. Paul George is a big guy to be playing the shooting guard spot. Kawhi Leonard, one of the best defenders of his generation. Nick Batum playing undersized at power forward right now, but super switchy. Like, that was what he built his career off of. And yeah, a lot of the luster was lost in Charlotte, but he still has something left in the tank as a team defender. And then Serge Ibaka, another lanky, mobile, switchy guy. And you've got other options if you want to go real big with Zubac, if you want to go, skilled with DeMarcus Cousins. You've got shooters like Luke Kennard and Marcus Morris. You've got Terrence Mann, who's given them good minutes. And you've got, again, one of those savvy guys in Rajon Rondo. So, like, they have everything they need. And I think that lack of attention they've thrived under. They are the number 2 scoring team in the league. They're the number 1 3-point shooting team in the league, and they've got the 5th best defense in the league. So the mix is right.
It is.
And it would be a hell of a series if they, match up with Utah in the conference finals, which I think is very possible at this point, unless, of course, the Lakers get healthy or we get somebody else who just has that kind of run of a lifetime sort of thing, which does happen, and this would be the year for that to occur, I think. But otherwise, I think the front runners are the Clippers and the Jazz. And again, as much as I love what Utah does, and I respect their starting 5, and they're a really good team, I'll take the Clippers because one of those teams has Kawhi Leonard and one of them doesn't. And Leonard is that much more transcendent of a superstar. And the Clippers supporting cast is just as good, if not even a little bit better than Utah's.
Yeah, it's so funny how this Clippers team is so much quieter than last year, with Kawhi Leonard still on the same roster. It's the guy known for not saying any words at all was on such a loud team last year, and now this year it's just completely the opposite. You just keep looking at the standings, and they've been 2, 3, 4, something somewhere down there the entire season. It's really kind of remarkable how different they are this year.
You can do work when you get past the fanfare, right? And that's what they're doing. They're doing work.
Hello, San Antonio. You did it for 25 years. So, on the other end of the spectrum, the Portland Trailblazers are doing a different kind of work, the bad work. I just gave you the Clipper schedule, right? So can I give you the April schedule so far, the results for your Portland Trailblazers?
Yes, absolutely. I just want to point out that you missed a golden opportunity to say the Portland Trailblazers are getting worked, because that's what's happening right now. But do your thing. Schedule us.
Let's find out. So beginning of the month, lost to Milwaukee, then beat Oklahoma City, loss, win against Detroit, loss, win against San Antonio by 1, loss, and they're playing Memphis as we speak again right now after they gave up 130 points to them just the other night. By the way, had the over 232.5 on that. Easy cover. So Portland is on the opposite end of what we were just talking about with the Clippers as far as how good they have been. Quietly, Portland has been that kind of bad, kind of loudly, most recently. And the fact that they're now, their last 4, as you heard, were losses. They're in the number 7 spot in the play-in tournament, and they have lost significant ground. And they're a game back of being safe in the regular tournament, which Dallas, ironically, since we last spoke, is now in that spot. What's up with Portland, and do they have enough to sort of right this ship? Because this schedule coming up is not the easiest in the world. I can mention it in a minute.
A bottom 10 defense right now and a middle of the pack offense is what's hurting them. And early in the season, their defense was not good. And frankly, it hasn't been great all year long. That's been a problem. But they were able to just outscore people, and you can make a living on that. It's weird, to have Robert Covington on a team that has a defense struggling as much as they do. I think that was part of why they traded out Gary Trent Jr. for Norman Powell from Toronto at the trade deadline, was the idea that Powell's a little more of a two-way player. He's not quite the flamethrower that Gary Trent can be, but they didn't need more points necessarily. That hasn't translated, again, whether that's a chemistry issue or what have you. That's going to take some time, but Yusuf Nurkic is an average defender at the center spot. Carmelo Anthony is a minus at this point. Derek Jones Jr. comes and goes in what he actually gives you besides dunks. He's certainly got the body for it. Lillard and McCullum are guys who compete on the defensive end, but they're both a little bit undersized. They're in that same backcourt, and their MO has never been their defense. It's always been about, hey, we're going to get you back on the other end and get you into a shooting war that we can win and you can't.
Well, that's why that's why they have those dangerous games, or a couple of games in a row, or a series where, they just get super hot and you just can't stop them.
Yeah, but McCollum has missed some time again, and when they go cold, this is, I guess, one of those classic teams, and maybe this does tie into the whole Charles Barkley old school, live by the 3, die by the 3 type of thing. But Portland is one of those classic teams that when they go cold, they don't really have a lot else to hang their hat on. And even hearing Damian Lillard say it's not the coaching staff, they don't need to make adjustments, we just need to play harder. Okay, that's true. Harder defensively, harder on the boards would certainly help. And again, if you're getting rolled on the boards and you're a team that employs Enes Kanter, that's a little weird, right? Just like if you've got Robert Covington, you're getting rolled defensively. And Covington looks like he's kind of running out of gas career-wise here a little bit. He's not making the same impact statistically on the defensive end. It's a little bit hard. I don't watch Portland all that much, so I can't tell you like the little nuances, and I'll have to go back and watch them some more. But just from watching his game logs and the games that I have seen, the steals and the blocks just aren't there, and he's not shooting the ball particularly well. He doesn't really give you that much more. So maybe, again, struggling in that locale a little bit, but Portland has had this happen before where they've brought in guys. I think back to when like Andre Miller arrived there in Portland during the Brandon Roy era. They've done this where they bring in mid-level free agents or trade guys, and they just don't work there. And it seems to have been this trend that I've seen for 10, 15 years with the Blazers, a lot more than others. I don't know that there's anything more than coincidence there, but Blazers fans would know this and see, we're kind of seeing this again, where you get a guy and you're like, oh yeah, he's perfect on paper. He fits, kind of like Norman Powell. And then the returns just don't quite meet the expectations of what the Blazers actually need.
I got a little bit of breaking news for you to talk about. First, Phoenix is beating Brooklyn 61-59, by the way, at halftime. DeAndre Ayton already has a double-double, 10 and 10. Kyrie Irving has 24 points in the first half. But the breaking news is that during that game, it's on ESPN. ESPN reporting that the Nets have told them that there is going to be no James Harden for the rest of the regular season, and that they are going to just try to work it out during the playoffs. So this report coming from Mitch Lawrence who covers for SiriusXM NBA. Says ESPN saying no James Harden for the rest of the regular season. So the Nets will go into the playoffs with Durant, Harden, Irving playing together for 7 games. They would have played 7 games together in the regular season by the time we start. So, thoughts on the latest revelations? Revelation. There you go. James Harden seems to be officially out for the rest of the regular season, and now they'll have to figure out that trio in the playoffs, which is super easy to do.
Eerily similar to the Clippers last year, isn't it? Paul George and Kawhi just never actually got to play together that much. One would come back and the other would be out. And they kept saying, don't worry, we're working on it. We're working on it. And time ran out. We've spoken about that at length. I talked last time, kind of reminiscing about those late 90s Miami Heat and a team that was loaded on paper, multiple all-stars, every single position locked down with what appeared to be a top flight guy. And they never got all 5 of them healthy together, really all 6 together. We saw that with the Brooklyn Nets back in the KG, Paul Pierce, Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Brooke Lopez, Andre Kirilenko iteration too, were on paper phenomenal, but they never got all of those guys together healthy. And of course, KG and Pierce were aging a lot more than people thought. So, folks, we've seen this before.
Yeah.
And Harden may come back, but you would really have to be the exception to the rule for the Nets to be able to make this work and win a championship this year under these circumstances. No, and there'll be plenty of people out there, the whole "you can't buy a championship" karma people, they'll be rejoicing at this as verifying what they've said all along.
And I would normally agree had these teams been playing together the entire season, but as I just mentioned, throughout the 72 games that they could have had together, like theoretically, James Harden came in at the beginning of the season, like it wasn't to start the season.
Harden came in halfway through the season, right?
Was it quite halfway?
I'm a little bit before halfway, but I mean closer to halfway than the start of the season when that trade happened.
And we were already dealing with injuries to start off with. James Harden was lighting it up when it was just sort of he and Kyrie or he and Durant for like 7 seconds or something before they had. Then Harden
7 seconds or less. Got to throw in the D'Antoni's on that team. Got to put that.
Good point. Good pull there. 7 games, man, that this team would have had completely together. Like this isn't the typical, like you mentioned, they bought the championship ring. If they do it, they've gone through some trials and tribulations to get this. No matter how good they've been. Like, what's the record right now? They are. They're 40-20. So going into tonight. So had they been together more than the 7 games, let's just say another 15 games, they're probably close to a 50-win team right now. Like this team is the definition of a super team altogether. But I'm with you. Like it's hard for me to lay down hard-earned money, which is how you sort of quantify if you really believe in a team on guys you just haven't seen together. They were good when they're together, but Philadelphia's been healthier and better throughout this entire season. The Knicks have been healthier and better throughout this entire season. Milwaukee's been healthier and better.
Almost everybody has by default, right? And Milwaukee and Philly have not actually been healthy, right? Just healthier.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to mention. It's like, I think the only team that's sort of been healthy the majority of the season, coming down like the list below them, maybe New York. Like maybe the first team that's been like very healthy the entire season, which is big reason why they are where they are right now. They would be the exception to the rule at this point because you'd be silly to just trust Brooklyn because of all their talent to just be good already. Okay, you know what? Let's have that thought exercise. So let's look at the standings right now, right? And let's see. So Boston right now is at the final spot right now at 6. It's safe. Then it's Miami, Charlotte, Indy, and Washington. Now it's a toss-up what can happen in those, that first sort of game or so series. And there's
I'll take Miami and Washington coming out. That's what I'll take right now coming out
I
of the playoff.
Charlotte's been slowly coming back, right? They've been
Mhm.
they've been fighting hard, right? They got
Mhm.
another big win today for some reason against Boston, a fully healthy Boston, by the way.
Mhm.
Well, almost fully healthy. All the big players. Kimba was playing, Tatum, they were all Brown, they were all
Jaylen
playing.
Brown was back, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Miami and Washington probably would be right. Brooklyn not vulnerable against let's see. Yes. Yeah, I think Brooklyn's vulnerable in at least a couple of games against just about anybody now. Like it, well,
Brooklyn cannot want to face Miami in the first round. As flawed as Miami can be at times, that is the classic, 2004 Pistons against the Lakers, Kobe, Shaq, Karl Malone, Gary Payton, paper champion sort of thing, where the Pistons just had none of that because they came in, they punched him in the mouth, and they just kept punching. And that is what Miami will do to a Brooklyn team who is maybe not on the same page and is not ready to play bully ball. Like, Miami's not fully healthy either, but that is a matchup that would scare the crap out of me if I'm Brooklyn, not at full health and trying to figure stuff out. Washington, on the other hand, good enough, talented enough, maybe hot enough to steal a game or two. Charlotte might be young enough and not afraid of the moment enough to steal a game. Indiana, good enough with Brogdon and Sabonis that maybe they get a game, but those teams are not threats to Brooklyn in the first round.
No, I think
Miami
you're right.
is. Absolutely is.
Miami is. I think they got the second best defensive points per game in the East allowed right now. And they are, like you said, they're dogs, man. They're dogs in the trenches. They are physical.
Right. And Jimmy Butler will want to do everything he can to show up Kevin Durant.
Yes.
Hero will play well. Bam will play well. Again, it's a health sort of thing, but
that's
man
a
alive.
Series,
yeah.
That's a series where Tyler Hero, is going to have a 34-point game and shoot like 8 threes, like go like 8 of 11 from the on the arc at some point. And also, like, let's not forget, the Heat were just there last year.
Correct.
Like all of the issues the Heat have had, all of them, all of it. They literally were just there last year, like in the bubble.
Right.
Like,
outside of Trevor Ariza and Nemanja Bjelica playing the 4 spot, they've been swapped in, and Kelly Olynyk, Myers Leonard are out. And Precious Achiuwa, who they drafted, who I love, by the way, he just works so well there in Miami. They're not going to get Victor Oladipo for meaningful minutes in the playoffs. I think that ship has sailed here. But outside of those 3 guys up front who are playing rotation minutes, nothing else has changed. The rest of the guys were all there. So it's not only, like, as you said, like the team that was there, but it literally is the roster that was there. It's the continuity thing coming up again.
I was just about to say, like, when we talked about what the Nets do not have, the Heat have in spades when it comes to the continuity of being together. And listen, Jimmy Butler's had some issues this season, had some health issues, had some heart issues. Not heart, I should say. So some games where it looked like he's not giving full effort because, that team's been very, very up and very, very down throughout it. And Jimmy Butler's been, Jimmy Butler's a hard dog to sort of keep down, right? Like, when you go through long stretches, like, he sort of shows it. Like, he doesn't take well to not being good, like on a team. Like, it's very evident in how he plays. And you don't think that Miami Heat team wouldn't just relish every opportunity to go punch those guys right in the balls every single time that they could? And to be that. Yeah, if I'm you,
think of how much Jimmy Butler got up for the challenge of facing the LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh Heatles back in the day, and how much Butler and Joakim Noah and those Bulls just hated the Heat for assembling this Hollywood as hell team, right? To quote Joakim Noah, assembling that team, whereas they felt like they had been working for it and they had been organically doing it. They were playing the right way. And Jimmy Butler has that not only underdog mentality, but just, I think, that hatred, for teams that you feel like artificially got there, whether you want to call it inferiority complex, whatever it is. but that's kind of been the MO of that Heat group. And this would be a great opportunity to show that. And frankly, I would love to see that as a first round series. If I'm Miami, of course, I'm striving to not have that actually happen because you want to get into the 6th seed and not have to go through the play-in stuff. But that would be one fantastic, opening round series. And the pressure actually would be on Brooklyn at that point.
Oh, I think completely. Yeah, because the whole talking point will be, all right, James Harden's back. What do you guys got? And game one's going to be tough. It's going to be early on rough.
Right. And if KD's got a calf injury, then Jimmy Butler's kicking him in the calf every time he comes down. That's the way it's going to be.
Jimmy Butler's the mold of the guys who always talk about the old NBA that they missed. Like, that's the kind of guy that's still around. Like,
right.
just may not be as many of them punching guys in the balls, but they're still
right.
They're still a Chris Paul.
The John Stocktons of the league have gone
there's still
Chris Paul's there.
A Jimmy Butler who doesn't want to hug up after every game, right? Jimmy Butler legitimately has grudges and plays with a chip on his shoulder.
I think Kawhi Leonard does too. I think he does, just he doesn't say it to people, but you're right. Westbrook is another example of going all out.
Yeah, there are guys like this that are still there that I wish those who hate on the current NBA sort of would just pay attention to. But like, that could just be your guy. Pick that as your guy. Watch what he does every single night, because you will love how hard Jimmy Butler works in a game when he's in, generally, especially when there's something on the line. Like, no one gives more of what they got in their tank than what Jimmy Butler does. And you put him up against the number 1 seed with everything at stake. I'm going to like the dog. Like, I'm going to like that dog going after the bone. And, he may not get the bone all 4 games of that series, but he's going to make Brooklyn really hate playing them. And that's, I think, just enough for us to be like, well, what if a good team played him?
Well, and that's oftentimes what happens is you get stuck in a first round series against a team that really makes you work, maybe takes it to 7, and you come out of there battered and bruised. And especially if you just escape by the skin of your teeth, and you've got confidence issues coming out of that, you are vulnerable then in that next round as the level of competition actually goes up another notch. And we saw that with the Clippers last year, right? They had a really tough series against Dallas. They were not right, and it came back to bite them. And year after year, there is a series like that where a team has to fight, and sometimes it makes you stronger and you actually gain momentum out of that. But other times it rattles your confidence, or you get guys that are dinged up and injured, and you're just not right after that first battle. And suddenly you're in danger as you get to that second and third round.
Yeah. I feel like this could be one of those matchups. If that ended up being the matchup that came out of that, because think about it. Everyone always like, you want to move on to the second round. The second round's the Eastern semis. Right, like you're one step away from the conference championship tournament. Like we act like it's a 7-month tournament to get there. Like, no, that's the next step. You're almost there. So like that the competition level goes from 1 versus 8. Okay, it's a good at the team probably that struggle to get in, to like you're getting a 4 seed or something. Like you're getting a good 4 seed. And
occasionally. It actually happens far less in the NBA than you'd think. Occasionally, 1 out of those 4 teams is a lower seed who played their butts off to get there, right? They got hot. But it is very, very rare compared to most other pro sports for that lower team to get out of the semis because of how the talent level has risen. And again, there's a few exceptions to that rule. Portland got to the conference finals as a 6 seed. Your Knicks went to the finals as an 8 seed, that sort of thing. But those are the exceptions to the rule. And that was a wacky year when the Knicks made it happen.
Oh, hey. I
will throw shade. That was a 50-game season that made no sense.
What's this year? It's a shortened season.
True enough. And, I'll eat crow if New York is in the NBA finals when this one is said and done.
Oh my God! Can you imagine how insufferable I'll be? Oh, if we're talking about the Knicks in the NBA finals against
insufferable,
like if it was the Knicks and the Suns in the finals, my man, come on now, I'm gonna be the worst.
The only reason I would get up for that is orange is my favorite color, and I'm gonna get that with either team then, I guess. But
I think the best case scenario for me is the Knicks versus the Nuggets. That way I can get my Nuggets pick to be as right as possible. And of course, my Knicks play for the championship. I just would like to be.
Can you imagine how insufferable the mainstream sports media will be in a matchup like that where the Knicks actually get it? Because you'll get all the fanfare and all the New York hullabaloo, and we'll have to revisit every 3 times they've ever had good teams.
Hey!
But then you get a smaller market team like Denver, and everyone's like, yeah, Nikola Jokic, he's great. I don't care about the rest of them. It will just be like Knicks nonstop. I will hate that.
Listen. I feel like I've dealt with LeBron nonstop for like 15 years.
Fair enough.
So I could use a shakeup every now and then. Plus, yeah,
and I don't mind small market teams getting in. I love when small market teams get in. It's just
like the
it is tough. It's tough when it's lopsided between the one team that you go, the media is going to talk about them for the next 3.5 hours, and I'll get 10 minutes on the other guys.
Yeah, well, you know what? The Nuggets are missing guys. So how about we go with the fully staffed Julius Randle, Emmanuel Quickly team with RJ Barrett and. Oh, man,
I demand a PJ Dozier puff piece. I demand it.
You'll get one. I might be the one that does it, but you'll get one. All right, Joel, that's going to do it for us. Good pod, man. Thanks for doing this. Who do we say it was? Bill Russell episode?
Yeah. Bill Russell, this was a defensible episode. So
it was.
All right. So if you've been listening to us on Spreaker or Spotify or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and you want to check out the video version, we are on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, share, do all those things that happen on the interwebs. Leave a comment. And if you're watching on YouTube and you need the audio version for some reason, we have lots of archives, by the way. If you ever want to go back through the old shows, the YouTube channel is new, but there were a lot of audio-only versions, and you can check that out, again, wherever you find your podcast. Thank you to our listeners who are here with us week in and week out. We really appreciate all of y'all.
Absolutely. And by the way, not to make things worse for Portland, they're losing by 11 at halftime to Memphis again. So good time.
Memphis is a dog team. You talk about Miami. Memphis is in that same mold. They just got to grow up a little bit, but that's the next Miami team.
They're a young fighter team. You just call Memphis the next Miami?
Yeah.
That may have to be defensed on another episode, brother. All right. See you guys.